Okey-doke. Well, I want to welcome everyone. I'm Tom Lobel. I'm the Dean of FGS and the Associate Vice President Graduate at York. And so welcome to this session of Experience Grad, especially focused for Indigenous students considering programs at the graduate level. And we have some wonderful panelists who are current students who can help answer some questions about the real experience and their their journey coming to and through grad school. I'd like to start, however, if you're new to York, this may be new, our land acknowledgement. If you're not new to York, you know it well and may have issues with it, but I say it as I must say it. York University recognizes that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It's now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to share and care peaceably for the Great Lakes region. Now, by way of welcome, just in terms of FGS, because of the pandemic, we come together again via Zoom with student panelists who will talk about their experiences and help answer questions. As for my part, I would say that at its best, York, really seeks creative thinkers and makers who challenge the status quo in every discipline. But relative to the status quo, it's an interesting and I would say dynamic, but always still challenging, often irritating time at York as it tries to actively transform itself into a place where Indigenous principles are woven into the fabric of our collective knowledge learning and making, but therefore also our collegial thought processes and decision making. Relative to dynamism, while Indigenous colleagues created the Indigenous framework for York, it's really only in the past couple of years that I felt any kind of signs of transformation. And by that, I mean more people creating a meaningful relationship with the principles, which include decolonizing and indigenizing curricula, ensuring that the perceptions and experiences of Indigenous people are reflected in the classroom and across the university, and facilitating research that's relevant to Indigenous life and respects Indigenous approaches to knowledge and learning. It's only recently that I see movement here, but I think our panelists will also, give us their impressions about some of the challenges. In the faculty, it's the Faculty of Graduate Studies. It's also been an interesting lesson, finally, I suppose, in understanding some of the nuts and bolts of systemic racism, systemic difficulties, how systems operate. Some of the changes that we're hoping and been trying to make are proving challenging. However, we've had some successes, which are good. For instance, redesigning the admissions process and working with the Indigenous Council to establish non-biased adjudication practices, which also include awards adjudication. And this is important. For instance, a simple thing, but we finally got the university to treat band funding in ways that maximize the benefits to applicants. It's a small and obvious step, but steps don't happen unless people make them happen. And always at York, the students play a crucial role in educating professors and administrators But in order to do that, which can feel like a risk, and many of you have experienced that decision-making moment, it's best if you can feel that you have support behind you. And so much of why we're here today, both FGS and the Center for Indigenous Student Support, is to show and convey that support. So that's me, that's FGS. And I will not be, an administrative talking head for any more of this. I will hand it off to Alexandra, to introduce herself. Unmute.
Introduce me. Okay. Hello. Hi. Welcome, everyone. Thanks, Dean, Tom, for that. My name is Ali. I am the Indigenous Recruitment Officer here. I've been working with Eileen in trying to help plan this event. She's really done the bulk of it though. She's a rock star. But I work here. I am Anishinaabe from Beausoleil First Nation. I work here in our Center for Indigenous Student Services. And I'm just really excited today to kind of chat about grad studies. I'm actually kind of learning too, because I have not yet done my master's, and I'm thinking about it, but we'll see if that happens for me. I'm also currently a mom to a young little baby who takes up a lot of time. So I feel like I'm getting a master's in motherhood. But yeah, that is me.
And at the end, towards the end of this session, you'll also talk a little bit more, I think, about CISS and what, what it does.
So super briefly, we actually have kind of rebranded and retitled our space. So our acronym used to be CAS. We are now CISS. So it's a hard C, not a soft C.
Got it.
Yes. But yes, I will briefly chat about sort of some of our support services and our programming that's available for students of all different, whether they're undergrad, graduate, master's, PhD level, whatever. But that will happen towards the end. Thanks for the reminder.
Awesome. I love your attitude about I haven't done my master's yet. Love it. We'll see in the future. I know you've got your hands very full right now. So what we'll do now is I'll just do a really brief introduction to what grad school is, who qualifies, that kind of thing, and then we'll get into the best part of the event, our panel speakers. So we have one current PhD student and an MA grad that it'll be so, I'm really excited to hear what they have to say. But this is just kind of a baseline, an explanation of grad studies to make sure that we're all on the same page with an understanding of grad studies. I've got a little PowerPoint, and I can send it around to everyone who registered for the event. So don't feel that you have to, if you want more information on it, I'll just give you the whole slide deck. I'm also going to turn my video off because my internet is acting up. Doesn't that always happen right when you need it? And I will share my screen. There we go. Okay, can everyone see the PowerPoint? Yes. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I suppose I should introduce myself. Sorry. My name is Eileen, and I'm the Graduate Recruitment Officer here at York. So working in recruitment and admissions for all graduate programs. Work with Ali pretty closely to do a couple events a year for Indigenous prospective and Indigenous graduate students, incoming Indigenous graduate students. So that's my role, is all grad admissions all the time. So we'll start off with just an explanation of what grad studies is. And please forgive me if I'm telling you something you already know. I just want to make sure that everyone has the same understanding of where we're at and the situations we're talking about. So the first level of grad study is master's degrees, and they come after a bachelor's degree, usually, but not all the time. It's the next level that's available after the bachelor's degree. And master's degrees are usually between 1 and 2 years long. So we've got ones that are 1 full year, a year and 4 months, a year and 8 months, or 2 years total. And usually there's 3 formats that a master's would come in. So coursework only, major research project, or thesis. So a coursework only degree, you would do about 8 graduate level courses, and then you're done your degree. Major research project, you would do about 6 graduate level courses, and then a research project that ends with a project. Traditionally, it's been a paper, but we're actually moving away from requiring it to be a paper, especially if you're doing a project surrounding Indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing. It could be your project, I don't want to say output, but the culmination of your project could be a paper, but it could also be something totally different. Thesis as well, as you would do about 4 graduate courses and then a larger research project. And there would need to be an outcome for that to show your learning. Again, traditionally a paper, but it doesn't have to be. So what that could be, there's lots of options available. And there are courses that are outside of these traditional formats. So let's say Masters of Social Work. They also include like a practicum, or maybe they include 2 practica, where you're out in the community working, doing a placement. So those are the 3 main kinds, and some programs offer all 3. It's your choice. Others, it's more like, this is the format we offer, and we ask you to work within that. Then, if you want to, you could proceed on to do a PhD or a doctoral degree. You don't have to, but it's certainly an option. And they're usually between 4 and 6 years. And usually you can complete it in 5. For York programs, we do require that you have your master's before going into a PhD. Most PhDs are the same format. You would do a couple of courses, then write your qualifying exam, and then it's years and years of research. So, excuse me. Now, those are the 2 main graduate degrees. We do offer graduate diplomas as well. They're kind of like a master's, but not yet. It's a handful of courses that you can take to earn a diploma. So less common, but certainly an option if that's something you're interested in. And why would someone go to grad school? There's, a million reasons. Everyone's personal journey is unique to them. But 3 main reasons are to increase career prospects. So there are a lot of jobs that don't require a master's, but there are some that do. Or even if your job maybe doesn't require a master's, it could put you ahead of the applicant group by having one. You could apply to be a manager instead of an individual contributor at a job. And then even if you're applying for a job that only requires a bachelor's, you could have an increased pay band or an increased salary as a result of your graduate degree. Then we've got for love of a subject. So some people just really love learning. They love being in school. They love what they do, and they just want to do it more. So sometimes we do have people stay, sometimes for multiple masters and then a PhD. And lastly, if you want to work in academia, looking forward at your life, you're thinking maybe I'll teach at a college, or maybe I'll teach at a university. You can teach at a college with a master's degree. That's to be an instructor. If you want to be a professor, you'll need to have your PhD. And yeah, keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to do it all at once. So you don't have to do like bachelor's, then master's, then PhD. Lots of people take gaps in between, take time off, raise a family, work to save money, go live life, and then come back to a degree if they want to later in life. So definitely don't think that this is something that you need to do like right now. It's definitely something that you could do right now, or you could come back to. So that it's open. Basic eligibility for these graduate programs. Master's programs usually require an undergraduate degree, so it's a 4-year degree. We look for grades with a B+ or above. However, especially for the master's degree, we have something called a unique admission. You can need a unique admission process. So you do not actually have to have a degree If you can showcase that you have life experience, knowledge that would be equivalent to a bachelor's degree, but gained in another way. So you can absolutely be accepted to a master's without having that bachelor's degree. For a PhD, it's a little bit more formal. We do ask that you have a master's, but you could have maybe no bachelor's and then a master's and a PhD, and that's perfectly fine. We look for your grades in the master's to be, B plus A minus, but chances are you would have that in your master's. So those are the basic eligibility criteria. But if you're looking at it and you're like, oh, I'll never meet that, or I don't meet that, we can absolutely meet one-on-one and talk about it. You're probably qualified. It's just in a way that you might not see right now. But definitely don't turn yourself away just because on paper it looks, XYZ. I'm sure there's a way where we can see a path forward for grad school for you. Oh, whoops. One back. Come on, PowerPoint. Don't fail me now. Okay. So we'll briefly go over tuition. And for Indigenous folks in what is now known as Canada and the United States, any Indigenous person in one of these, now countries qualifies for domestic tuition. So for most grad programs, you're looking at a cost of just over $5,000 a year for that program. So in graduate studies, there's much, much more funding available for students than there is for undergraduate students. So I'll talk about funding packages, which you're automatically considered for, and then some funding sources. And again, I will send this whole slide deck around. I know it's a lot of information in a short amount of time. So you can have a look at it on your own. We can meet about it, no problem at all. So you'd be looking at the domestic packages. A domestic student per year, most full-time students in a program would be receiving a package of $11,000 per year. So with tuition being about $5,100, you would have $5,900 available left over to help with living expenses. And that's, I don't know if I mentioned per year. So if it's a 2-year program, it would be $11,000 per year. For a PhD student, your funding looks like just under $24,000. And that's for 5 years. So we do fund up to and including that 5th year, which is a benefit. Some people finish in 4 years. Some people take an extra a year or two. But after tuition, you're looking at about $19,000 a year to help with living expenses. So huge list here, and I haven't captured everything, but there are a lot of financial resources on top of funding packages. So a funding package, if you get it, you're automatically considered for it when you apply to a program. You don't need to do anything extra for it, and you can apply for money on top of it. So there's some here. We've got provincial awards like Ontario graduate scholarships, Tri-Council and Canadian scholarships, Trudeau, the Trudeau Award, York Internal Awards, which are donor awards, usually between $500 and $5,000. The Academic Excellence Fund, which is money that you can access to like during your degree for degree completion assistance. York Financial Assistance, which is based on financial need. OSAP, of course, the Ontario Student Assistance Plan for residents of Ontario. And then I had a look when I was making the presentation at the Inspire award list, and they had a lot of awards that were not necessarily just for undergraduate students. So if you're in your undergrad right now, or you've recently graduated, you may have had a look at those awards, but make sure to check again, because there may be awards that now you qualify for, or are new and do apply to graduate students. So this, of course, is in addition to band funding, which maybe Jody or Ali can speak to afterwards. But new for this year, we are doing the application fee waiver for Indigenous students. So normally it costs $130 to apply to grad studies at York, but we are waiving this fee for all Indigenous graduate students for fall 2022. So when you're ready to apply, please send me an email and we can move forward with that. If you've already applied, I know applications open this week and you're like, I don't know what the chances are, but if you did this past week, let me know and we can refund you. Because applications are open now for next fall and will be due between December and April. So some of you joining, you're thinking like, I just came to this to learn more. I am not applying for next fall. This is too much. Please don't worry. This is only applicable if you do want to apply for fall 2022. We do intend on continuing in the future. So if you're thinking, fall 2024, that's my year, we will, I can't promise, but, I'll fight and make sure that we can do that for you in fall 2024. So that is the slide deck. It was just 10 pages. I've got the FGS Faculty of Graduate Studies social accounts and my email address. But just in the interest of time, if anyone does have any questions, they can take them at the end. But I think moving into the panel part of the session would be great, and really excited to hear what these folks have to say.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Eileen. Sorry, I'm just hoping okay, there we go. Yes, so I'm just very, very briefly going to introduce our two wonderful panelists here. We just want to make sure that we have them on as much as possible and answering some questions and just providing some of their knowledge. So we have our two panelists here, Amy Hull and Elizabeth Best. Amy, oh, sorry, my page is closing. Okay, oh my goodness. Amy will be graduating with her master's in dance next month, or I guess it will be this month, I think, Amy. You may need to correct me if I'm wrong there. And she's actually currently in a course to become a death doula and hoping and planning to pursue her PhD. I'll let Amy speak more about herself and her community and her experience. And we also have Elizabeth Best. Elizabeth is a fourth-year PhD student in the history program. And they are also a fantastic beater and artist. I have creeped a little bit on your Instagram, and I'll also let Elizabeth introduce a little bit more about themselves further as needed. So I'd love to open up the floor, I guess, to answering some questions with them and just really learning from their experiences and what they have to say.
Can I start us off with just some get the conversation going? Because I think for participants, you can use the Q&A function, and Eileen or Ali, I think both can see that, which would be great. So I'll just start us off by saying, I don't know, let me start with Amy. How did you learn about grad school, or why did you think grad school would be the place to explore what you wanted to do? And what made you think about it and take the plunge?
I was like, well, as soon as I got to York, like not a lot of people, like nobody in my family except for like one of my cousin's wife has ever done grad school before in my family. So like I didn't understand what it meant really. But then when I got to York in my first class of my first semester, like the end of the semester, I go up to the professor to get my exam, and he's like, come and sit down. He's like, Amy, it's time for you to start thinking about your PhD. So I was like, what is this? And so basically ever since then, like all my professors have really been like helping me and encouraging me and just like explaining how things work to me and why I should do grad school and, helping me to get there back in, I guess that was 2016. So now here I am. I did it.
And just quickly, was it worth it? Like, did it work?
I guess I like it. I'm going to keep going and do my PhD now. So I guess they saw that in me. So
that's wonderful. Yeah. What about you, Elizabeth?
That's so nice and like hopeful. I'm glad that was your experience. How did I get into grad school? I think I got into grad school because nobody could answer my questions. So I just like I went into my undergrad thinking like, once I'm done my undergrad, I'll know like the answers to this question. And then like I knew nothing after undergrad. So I was like, well, maybe if I do a master's, then I'll know the answers to this question, and still don't. And now I'm doing my PhD. I'm 4 years into my PhD, and I know too much the other way. So when I talk about the things that I'm interested, I have to like walk it way back.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm just past that like dark phase of the PhD where you're like, why am I here? Or, like, what am I doing? And now I'm in the dissertation phase, which is like what I initially went to do my undergrad to learn about. Now in my PhD, 4 years into my PhD, I'm able to study the things that like I really wanted to when I was 18.
That's amazing, and good luck, because it's the dissertation phase is its own weird, hard, wonderful thing where it is all you, and you bring now so many years of knowledge and experience to it, but
Yeah,
you wake
I
up
have no
every
idea.
day.
Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing. So it doesn't get any clearer.
But I mean, in one way, though, that's a positive in that it truly is a blank slate. And at a certain point, you realize, wait, I don't know what to do, which also means I can do almost anything.
Yeah.
I can,
Yeah.
and then it really becomes this self-reflexive thing where you're like, okay, what do I want? I've been telling myself I want to do this. Now I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
And sort of sometimes you have to fight for it too. Anyway,
It only took a decade.
I look forward to that. I really do. Well, so I'm sure people in the audience will have this question. What was your experience like applying for grad school? Because from undergrad to grad, I mean, Amy, you suggested it a little bit. It's like, you're going through undergrad and you're in your fourth year usually. What was it like? Were you ever somebody in the audience? Did anyone offer a session like this? Did professors help you understand what the application process was about? What were they looking for? That kind of thing?
Well, me and Eileen have been like this for years now because I keep saying I want to apply to grad school. But yeah, like I would meet with all the professors every period, I guess, and like be like, okay, here's my update, and then like yeah, just like I came to all these sessions. Eileen remembers. I was just hanging out in all of them. And then just one thing that like for me that was a challenge with the application is that it asked for something, like it asked for a 2,000 word paper, and in my undergraduate degree in the same department we had never written a 2,000 word paper. So I had to write my own out of my butt or something. I don't know if I can say that, sorry.
Yes you can.
Yeah, so that for me was like the challenge of like there is a gap between it that like I had to like leap over, but I did it with the help of my professors. So yeah.
I mean, it really shows one of the things Eileen mentioned, that there's a bit of a qualitative difference between undergrad and grad. Grad is a research degree, and when when I say that, it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, the first thing it means is a 2,000 word paper, in the application process, and if you don't yet have it, you get the first experience of figuring out, okay, this is this, and it's only going to get bigger from here, all the way to what Elizabeth is writing, which will turn into 100,000 words, or maybe, I mean, you'll see. What about you, Elizabeth? You said after undergrad, and I sympathize with that statement so much. After undergrad, I knew nothing. Well, how was applying to grad? Was it obvious or not obvious?
I personally didn't ever expect to see myself going to grad school. Like I have no role models. I grew up in the child welfare system. So it's not like anybody was looking at this foster kid and being like, one day this person's going to become a doctor of philosophy. Like there wasn't any like there at no point in any part of my life has anything been clear. So I mean, that's probably why I'm attracted to the PhD, because I just do what I want. And I'm like in charge of like my own schedule and stuff like that. I make my own stability. But applying, I took breaks. I think like the biggest thing was like taking breaks between my undergrad and between my master's and between my PhD, so that I had, like, looking back, I wasn't thinking this way, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So those year breaks, I either worked with my community, or I just straight up took time off from school so that I could build an identity outside of grades and academia. And then by the time it was time to apply, I had been sitting on an idea for a long time. So the application process was a lot easier for me than trying to finish an undergrad degree while applying to graduate programs, because like there's a lot that goes into an application. There's a lot that goes into funding. You've got to know like the right language when you're applying. So I got a lot of help from professors, like proofreading and just giving me the language to like talk about the niche that I wanted to go into. But also we kind of talked about it briefly, that grad school requires a certain amount of passion to like push yourself through it. And if you are just doing like a rush job on your applications and you're not actually into the idea, then it's harder to find that motivation if you do get accepted, or if you are having competing interests over different schools and different professors and different programs. So for me, I just found the right people. Like I looked for people, I looked for the right people. So like when you're applying to grad school, you need to spend a little bit more time looking for professors who are either interested in your work or that you're interested in their work in a way that will like sustain you over a long period of time.
Yeah, that really resonates. I mean, something both of you said that implicitly that's worth sort of underlining. In your undergrad, you made relationships with at least some professors to, to get their advice, to have them to workshop whatever your statement of interest or your writing sample might be, to workshop the ideas, to help with some of the language. I think that's a crucial part too. Like once you make the decision that you have professors you can talk to, to help with the application process. Because without that, it can be a daunting thing, perhaps. So one last general question, then I'll stop. Let's throw it open to the people who are here. And this, I'll stick with you, Elizabeth, and I'm gonna risk this, and you can yell at me. But you look happier this year. I mean, last year was slightly dark and really important, because some of your answers to questions gave a real reality, which if nobody else had said it, nobody would be saying it, and yet it still exists. And yet, I don't know, you're looking great. So yeah, and it sounds like you passed your comps or something.
Yeah. I did think about that. Like when Ali sent me the email, I was just like, last year I was like the negative person that was just like, everything sucks, like you have to fight all the time, which is like true.
Yeah.
Like there definitely were some dark days. Like I would describe the first part of my PhD as like the most racist book club you've ever been in. like that's just the way that the program was when I started it. It was just like there hadn't been any outsiders in those small rooms to be like, maybe we should rethink this. And I had to like choose every day what like stereotype of an Indigenous person I was going to be. Was I going to be the angry Indian today? Was I going to be like passive and just like cry in my car on the way home? Like it was definitely a struggle, and I definitely think that like that needs to be said, because that was said to me when I started grad studies. It's like there are definitely people who have been making inroads, but it's still tough for queer Indigenous folks who live at the intersection of a bunch of identities that they haven't figured out yet, that other people are going to like push and like try to get free work out of you, or
Oh, yeah.
you become the teacher. Like there's definitely lots of work that still needs to be done. And I think I've just reached the point where like I've finished jumping through the hoops. So like I finished my comprehensive exams, I finished my special project, I finished, what else did I do? I did my dissertation proposal, and I got on the other side of ethics review. And that took four years of like fighting different systems and just being like banging my head against the wall about like why we have to do it this way.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I'm definitely far removed from the application process. I have funding now. I guess that's another security blanket that I have that I did not have when I started my master's, was like that I have a shirt grant,
Yeah.
which gives me a certain amount of financial stability for the next 2 years. And so like I'm at a sweet spot in the PhD where it's all up to me. I'm financially stable for now. I'm slightly above the poverty line, but not much. And I don't have to deal with other people. Like I'm just like
Yeah.
the books I wanted to read at the beginning of my PhD, now I can.
Yeah.
Like I'm done with the way that it's always been done. Now I'm the one who's creating knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, let me get to Amy first, then we'll come back to that. Especially the external funding, because funding makes a big difference in everyone's sort of mental health, and ability to move forward in a program in the way that you want. The financial considerations matter. But Amy, so you just finished the master's. What was your experience in the program? Like, was it just joy every day, or like what, you applied, you were thinking about it, you applied, you got in. Was it different? Did you have to be different? What was enabled, or how did it feel for you?
Well, I mean, I think my experience might have been different because I already knew all my professors and I was already on friendly level with my professors. So while I did have to sometimes fight to, be like, actually, like this conversation around race is actually a very relevant conversation right now.
Yeah.
It was like I didn't feel as intimidated, or I didn't feel as like hurt, I guess, because I knew these professors for 4 years before that, and they're the ones that got me here. So it was kind of like, the student coming over the master and like being the master now. That's what it felt like to me. But like, what was I gonna say? Yeah. So I was actually the guinea pig of like a brand new program.
Mhm.
And like, so we did 8 courses and a major paper in 3 semesters. So
That's a
that
load.
was, sorry,
That's a big load.
it was a big load. And I mean, I did it. We all did it. There was like 6 of us or something, and like we did it. But yeah, I mean, they're also not taking any new dance graduate students, or they didn't
Uh,
this past year.
yeah,
So I
this
don't
past
know.
year, there's in the faculty, there's going to be a reorganization, and then it opens up again in a different way.
Yeah, I've
They
heard the
didn't want.
whisperings.
They probably learned a certain lesson of what happens when you use guinea pigs.
So, I mean, yeah, I definitely survived it. Here I am. I'm doing stuff still. But yeah, it was definitely a lot. Like there were days where like I would just sit. Well, I was also, the thing is, it was also during the pandemic over Zoom. So I was completely home alone for like 14 months. Like all I had was my frog. And he passed away in June and it ruined me. So like I don't know. I don't know if I can give like a good solid description of how my experience was, because it's not going to be the same for the next people, that's for sure.
No, but the theme of you both are saying maybe the most strongest articulation of the resilience you have to have, whether it's the constant fighting and knowing that you need to get through that because then you can do stuff that is for you, or the constant fighting of, I'm alone in my room doing 8 courses, in a kind of guinea pig structure of a program. That's its own. For me, it would be a mental health challenge, that takes resilience as well. That's amazing. Let's open it up to some Q&A, if we may. Who's going to moderate, Eileen or Ali?
Ali, did you have a preference? I can do it if you don't want to.
I don't have a preference. I think you'd be great, Eileen.
Okay, no problem. We have actually some questions already, but for anyone who is listening and does have questions, you could put them in the chat. You could put them in the Q&A. It's completely up to you. We've left the Q&A open for such a small session, so it's whatever's easiest. And yes, rest in peace, Beep. That is, I'm so sorry. That's, in a non-pandemic year alone, pets, oh, it's such a devastating loss. So we have a question. Is there an option to do the majority of this online? So I'm thinking we mean like a program online, maybe, if you could elaborate on the question. Sadie says, has the due date for grad applications changed this year? Not specific to the panelists, but yes, every grad program every year is allowed to choose their deadline, and they are allowed to switch it up if they think they need more time or they want to make it earlier. So every program every year changes potentially the deadline. Okay, Amy says, how do you navigate approaching professors for recommendations if you haven't built those relationships during your undergrad? Amy or Elizabeth, I don't know if you can speak to this, maybe talk about your own references. I don't know if anyone would rather go first or.
Okay, I'll answer this one because it's relevant for master students that are in like niche programs and PhD students. I think when I first started, I think you had to have 3 references. So I had like 1 personal reference, 1 work reference, and then a professor. And honestly, cold calling profs is like the only way to do it. If there's any professors that are like connected to your Indigenous center community or something like that, they will be more willing to help you with that, because you would just explain to that professor that like you've been out of undergrad for whatever, or like you didn't meet any of your professors and you're applying for this program, and they're gonna want like information from you. Like they're gonna want your grades, they're gonna want to look at your other references. They're going to want to look at like what you're interested in, maybe developing a relationship with someone after your graduate or after your undergrad. Like process is part of like what you're going to have to do, and it's going to take time. So you have to, if you need references for your grad school stuff, you're going to have to invest time. That's like, there's no way to make that part easier. There's no shortcut. Unfortunately, you've got to try to get the best references you can. And then if you can't get that reference, then get the second best reference you can, which is like a person who knows you now or that you can develop a relationship with through your like academic credentials or community work or something tangentially related. Because unfortunately, that's part of the process. When you ask for money or when you are trying to get into a program, you need a certain number of references, and it's not something that you can skip.
Okay, Amy, did you have anything to add about that?
No, I came from a really small program, so like everybody knew everybody, so it's hard for me to, I don't want to I don't want to make something up.
No, for sure. That's absolutely no problem. I would say for the person asking, because they elaborated on their question, I've had different professors almost every year in history, so it's been hard to build that. So yeah, most programs at York, they do require the 3 references, some 2, but we have lots of people who do use work references or community references, knowing someone through work or volunteer, or a community connection. So the purpose of references is really for people to speak to your abilities, your suitability for grad school. So if there's someone who doesn't fit into those strict categories that you think could speak to that, you could definitely ask them. Oh, Tom's got his hand raised. As an English professor, I'm sure he's got great insight on this too.
Well, really just to support both what you just said, Eileen, but also what Elizabeth said. I know cold calling might feel, I don't know, scary, anxiety provoking, but if you've had many professors in history or whatever your discipline, I hope, go ask yourself, well, in which courses did I get my best grades? That's a start. But also, who did I like the best? Like, did I have any kind of affinity to the person? And that's just a question you ask yourself in terms of choosing who am I going to cold call, who am I going to, send an email, or if we're back in person, visit office hours. And even if you haven't, you might have been like me, you sat way back in the lecture hall and you had no relationship to this professor, but you might have got a really good grade because you liked the course, you liked the readings, you had a good tutorial assistant, and you just did well. But the professor doesn't know you yet. And so the cold calling is starting now to say, hi, I'm thinking I took your class in 2018, whatever, I really enjoyed blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking about going to grad school. Can I make an appointment with you on Zoom? And start, like, you create the relationship now by getting them to help you with the articulation of a statement of interest for the application. And the more interesting that idea, the more they get interested in you, and there's the relationship. It doesn't have to be a long-standing thing. Amy was lucky in that it's the same people, kind of, it's like a family. But for most of us, it isn't that. It's just some professor at the front of the room, and you kind of have to create a relationship even now for the application.
And it's like it's a professor's job to do that.
Yeah.
Like it's part of like what a professor knows they've got to do for students. So like you're gonna have to like deal with rejection because like some professors just don't have time, they have other deadlines. But the more people you ask and just like the timing of it, like it's part of the game. And like professors know that they had to do it. I think they'll be more willing to help you out than you expect.
And
Actually,
we
sorry,
all benefit from it.
Tom,
like-
just because Amy has got to leave in like a minute, so just wanted to make sure that she could get in any last words that she wanted to say before she has to go.
Yeah.
I don't have a prompt. I had a good time. Do grad school. Yay.
Wise words. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thanks so much, Amy.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go to work now. I'm sitting here and doing the exact same thing. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
You, Amy.
Okay, sorry about that, Tom.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know if this is any comfort, but whoever asked the question, I was no different. When I moved from undergrad into grad school, I had to ask some professor who I knew didn't know me. I mean, I knew he didn't know me, but I liked the course, and I thought I did well. Later on, I went back and read that paper that I wrote for that person. I thought, oh my God, that was terrible. But, like Elizabeth said, it's part of his job So he fished out my paper and said, okay, I don't know you. I don't remember your face. I don't know who you are, but I see something here. I get it. Tell me more. And he wrote a reference. Cool. And, so if I can do it, you can do it.
They probably have a template and they're just filling in the information.
Yeah, I mean, most professors at the faculty have definitely written a lot of these before, so I'm sure they've are practiced at doing it on a kind of short timeline. And yeah. Another question, so maybe we'll give it to Elizabeth first. Allie, maybe you have some insight into this. Is there a community of Indigenous graduate students at York? What supports are available to us?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yes.
If you can answer.
Yeah, so our like my experience at multiple universities, the University of Waterloo, Laurier, and York, is that grad students don't have time to be community. That's like the number one thing, is that grad students have to be interested in being part of a community first, and it has to come from within the group. So yes, there is a presence of grad students at York, which I'm pretty well versed with. Amy's also part of that community. But yeah, it's about how much time you give into it. We have done some good stuff over the last 3 years. When I first started, there wasn't an Indigenous field course at the PhD level. It was just like me doing reading courses with one professor who wasn't Indigenous. And since then, we've tried to fix that. So I don't know, I guess the 3rd and 4th year PhD students is kind of like the center of it right now. And if you know me, or you know Rebecca, or you know Jen, then you're you're kind of in the conversation, and we get directed to new grad students. So we have an informal support group once a month. We haven't had it in October yet, but we probably will. And we've just had them on Zoom lately, and we just complain about the PhD program and support each other through the seasons of the PhD program, because there's so few of us across all the programs at York. It is really hard to find a central location, but through Zoom, it's actually been easier to meet up on people's schedules, in the middle of the day or in the evening, stuff like that. But yeah, I would say that it's who you know, mostly. It's who you are introduced to and how you identify if we find you, because you have to self-identify in order for us to know who you are.
Elliot. Oh no, all good. Go on.
Yeah, no, that was really well put, Elizabeth. Okay, so I'll be honest, I've sort of been gone for a year and a bit, so I still feel like I'm not quite as keeping up with what's happening here, what's going on with our students right now and sort of where everyone is. But I know that it has kind of always been a little bit of a struggle for grad students, because like you've said, there's just, I think the time is a thing, and the capacity, and being pulled in tons of different directions. A lot of times, not always, but some graduate students, whether they're master's or PhD, they maybe have families or dependents they're caring for. They may have other jobs that they're also doing, and other ways of hopefully keeping above the poverty line, which is a real thing. So I think it has sort of always been a little bit tricky, I know, for us at the center. Our supports and services and programs are open to all students. The only thing that we have an Indigenous Students at York Association, or Indigenous Students at Association of Indigenous Students at York. But that is open to undergraduate students because they're funded by the YFS, which is for undergraduate. So that's the only thing that it like wouldn't like they still, I think, open their things to graduate students, but you can't be like an elected position within that student group if you're in the graduate studies. But like our supports and services here at CISS are all open for graduate students, but I definitely do find I mean, right now we're not really seeing a lot of students actually in person anyways because of COVID and because of some regulations we have and some safety plans we have in place, but it certainly has in the past been a challenge as well to see our graduate studies students. So that is something I think certainly room to grow. I think room to maybe try to support those students better and connect them better. I know for me, we talked, Elizabeth mentioned quickly about self-identification. Yeah, self-identification is really key as well. There is a list that is generated when students self-identify, whether it's at the undergraduate or the graduate level. And I do have access to that list. We try to keep in contact with those students. It doesn't always work out sometimes. I think too, a lot of students who are either in their master's or their PhD, they find students within their programs. And that's really because everyone's really focused in what you're learning and researching and writing about and just kind of living and breathing. That I think from what I've heard or from what I've maybe experienced, a lot of students really find their people and their group of people kind of within their programs. And they may not, I don't know if you would get like maybe, but you probably may not always get like a histories master's student meeting with like another kind of master, like, I don't know, does engineering have masters? I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like there's sometimes those similar interests really bring people together. But I think certainly an area for growth for sure, and something that we're really sort of trying to focus on and explore and look into currently. So that's a quick answer to that question.
And can I just also say that a lot of people have two minds about self-disclosure, self-identification. Totally understandable, but I think it's only it's only CISS that gets that information. Like FGS doesn't get it. Anyone who self-declares, that information goes to the center, and I think that's really important. And then things that the center may develop, they can bring us in as partner and we can help expand. But there's a kind of, I guess what I'm saying is we think self-identification is really important, and we protect the confidentiality of that by the information only going to the Center for Indigenous Student Support, which, so it's a double thing of it's safe and good things can happen from it. Including, the last thing I'd add is whenever FGS gets to showcase somebody's research, if you see another Indigenous student doing really cool research, I don't care where it is, in engineering, but it looks interesting and it's on social media, reach out. Like, even if it's just that tweet, that response says, that's the coolest thing in the world. I'm in history doing whatever. Hi, see what happens.
I have actually, this is completely unrelated, but I have actually followed people on social media for like their artwork or what have you, and then realized they're a graduate student at York University. So people, whether you self-declare or not, I think it's when you open your eyes and you like read a little bit more into people's about or meet them and talk to them, you'll be surprised at who is where, and I don't want to say hiding in plain sight because they're not hiding. I just wanted to bring up, there's a program that I want to highlight that is the Masters of Education in Urban Indigenous Education. And that's a cohort downtown that it's all Indigenous students that I know of, learning together from Indigenous instructors. And that is a great community to be a part of if you are interested in education. And then we've got some really great questions. Also, Amy is in the chat with the Indigenous Student Association email in the chat if you'd like for that. But Jessica asks, how did you manage, and I guess this is for Elizabeth and Tom, how did you manage the stress of getting into grad programs when there are very limited spots? I'm freaking out because there are only 10 spots in the program that I want to apply for.
How do I personally deal with stress? A lot of crying, napping, and hot baths. Like, like I don't know what else to tell you, because that is stressful, and like that stress is valid. That like it's a tough. It's once you get to masters and masters and PhD, you're competing against a bunch of people who are just like you, who get really good grades, who are like really into reading books. Like the competition it's real and it's not easy. So like my general advice for that would be that having an identity outside of school is really important.
I guess I would add, poo, if you don't get in this year, and the program is important to you, like, and how you imagine you're going to develop in the program, if that's really important, don't give up. Like, you didn't get in, take another look at that application, show like what you submitted, show it to other professors, try to get a sense of what might be improved. Sometimes it means even taking more undergraduate courses, like if it's about grades. If it's worth it to you, don't give up. And maybe apply to, as Elizabeth said, if you can't get your best reference, get the second best reference, which is if you can't get into this program, what's the next one you would have wanted? The one that is almost as good, maybe somewhere else, another place, another discipline. I think, especially if this year we're waiving the application fee, apply to the programs. I don't want to say as many programs as you can, because that'll make Eileen crazy, but some things can be done in history, but they could also have been done in humanities. They could have been done in English, or they could have been done in social and political thought. We just last couple of years ago, English hired Kenzie Allen, who's a poet, Indigenous poet, but she also works in AMPD because her poetry and weaving and creation, she's creating in words, she's creating in reeds, she's creating in beads. And, so she can be in two places. Well, maybe you can be in two places. So I would encourage you to think smartly and broadly, because it's the case for all of us where, you may not get in one, but you might get in another. The other thing I would add, and Eileen can talk about it too, is that we do something called switch offers, which is to say you're applying to history, but history had like a banner year, everyone's A+ and wonderful. And so they, 10 people accepted and that's that. And you were number 11 or something. We are encouraging programs when they can identify an application file, it could be history, but could also be humanities, that they contact that applicant and say, would you mind if we switch this so that this other program can have a look and maybe consider you? And it's up to you. And if you say yes, then you have a sort of second shot in an analogous program, a related program. And because at York, you can take courses, up to 6 courses outside of your program anyway. So many people are crisscrossing knowledges, that I don't want to say it doesn't matter which one you get into, but there are many options for where you could do what you want to do.
For sure. We definitely had a really successful switch year this year and got some people into places where they hopefully are doing what they want to do. It's only October, so we'll have to wait to hear from them. But I hear a lot about that for people about numbers. And they're like, there's only 10 spots, there's only 5 spots. So York doesn't really publish acceptance rates in the way that some schools do, but let's say there are 50 people applying for those 10 spots. It's not really like a 1 in 5 chance because you've got, of those 50, let's say half are domestic and half are international. As a domestic student, then you're competing for against 25 people for those 10 spots. Of those 25, there will be 2 or 3 of people who accidentally put in an application or thought they were applying to New York University or don't complete the application. Then there will be people who applied, but they almost didn't graduate and they don't have any like other experience to make up for that. So even if you look at a program and you say, oh, okay, there's 50 applicants for 10 spots, that's really, it's not like a direct kind of fraction. Love the pet cameo. Love it. Just love Zoom for that reason. But okay, back to the questions. We have one from Michelle. Again for Elizabeth and then Tom. So Michelle says, suppose you've got all your grades and your references sorted out. You're looking at a pool of similar graduate programs. How do you make the decision about which one to go to?
Elizabeth, you're the guest of honor. You get to take these things first.
Okay, so which question was it? Sorry, Winston's
No.
Winston needs help.
No problem at all. Oh, I love it. Okay, so Michelle says she's got, or sorry, I don't know, they've got the grades and references sorted. That's not a problem. They're looking at a variety of different programs, but how do you choose which ones to apply to? And then let's say you get accepted to all of them. How do you choose which one to attend? Like what factors are most important there, would you say?
I was applying, I wish someone had told me that you can talk to people about money, that you can like leverage different OGS and SHRC scholarships and stuff like that. And yeah, this is a plug for Laurier. I know Jess is here, but when I was trying to decide which master's program to go to, I ended up choosing a program where I knew the people were friendly, first of all, that people at a certain university were more helpful or less helpful. So like, what does a master's student mean to the university? Or what does a PhD student mean to the university? That's important because customer service and like the size of the university will impact your experience at school. But also certain universities do things like top up bursaries in order to attract grad students. So if you get an OGS, if you get a external scholarship, you bring prestige to the university. So different universities want different things. So for example, a smaller university might be more focused on master students and undergrads, and then a bigger university might be more focused on PhDs. So how much money do you get by accepting your offer to a certain university? Do you get a certain amount of base funding? Do you get a TA-ship? Are there other university jobs that you can apply to, like work study programs with like the Indigenous Student Center? Are there other research assistant positions? So like you can have a supervisory committee that helps you with your actual writing part, but you can also make relationships with professors if you need like lab access or you want a certain type of research experience, like in the archives. You can work outside of your department if that's like, we're talking about like combining different programs and different areas of study, that if there are more research assistant jobs like in humanities, historians are always going into the humanities and doing TA-ships and things like that. Yeah, so I wish that somebody had told me that you can ask for more money or you can like look for more money. So when I did my master's degree, I chose it based on money. So my OGS is like a less prestigious financial award than SHRC, but I turned down SHRC because bringing OGS to the university gave me more top-up bursaries.
Hmm.
So then my SSHRC, which is like technically a smaller, less prestigious award, actually went further because I was guaranteed a TA-ship and I got money for bringing a tri-council award to the university. So like talk to professors and talk to other students about money. And don't be afraid to like, be like, this isn't enough money for me to come here.
And remember, they won't take it away. So it's even if you come across as pushy, it doesn't matter. They've already extended the offer, you know. So if you have a couple of offers, and offers, just as Elizabeth said, they can be built really differently. You know, I was a graduate program director, and I was constantly battling with Brock University, of all places. Felt demeaning, but they had a dollar value to their offer that was higher than, you know, what York was offering at the master's level. But I had to, you know, talk to the students and say, yeah, but our tuition is almost half. So that it's a higher offer at this other institution, but they're going to gobble half of it up with tuition. And ours is for a scholarship. So I'm thinking of Amy and her 8 courses. I can't imagine she'd get through the 8 courses and an MRP while she's doing a TA-ship. It's just there's no way to do that. So you have to evaluate, you know, is it just a lot of money or is it a lot of money for hidden work? I worry about that. But sometimes, as we know from life, more money is more money, and that's the end of the story. Like that's really important. New paragraph, though, I would say for me, and I guess it depends on the degree, but especially for a PhD, you really want to go to the place where the people are right for you, because it's a long-term commitment. You're sort of going to become like them. And so people are really important. If it's a cold or mean university already at the application stage, that's a taste of what's going to happen, you know, for the rest of the degree. So I would also say, think about the money, but just as Elizabeth said, think about the people.
Actually, that is a perfect segue into the next 2 questions. And Jody, I'm hoping that we're able to make you a panelist if that's okay. We've got some financial questions.
Can I peddle the fact that we created 6 new OGSs for Indigenous scholars only this year?
That's great.
I know. we got money. Come here.
Jody, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So Amy has the first question regarding funding.
Okay.
Do Indigenous funding opportunities through York require status or beneficiary cards?
Say that again. Do Indigenous
funding opportunities through York require status or beneficiary cards?
That's a good question, although I guess I would answer it this way. It's not really or. I mean, status, sure, is like if it's status, obviously eligible. Beneficiary card, depending on what you mean by that. But I'm still saying, I would still say this: if you self-identify and are confident self-identifying, that's the basis we use. And so I wouldn't get into, let me say it this way, we're not in the business of gotcha, you know?
Yep.
Absolutely not. So if you self-declare, that's what we do. That's what we use.
That is, and I'll just reinforce that 100%. That is, that's good enough to make you eligible for this specific funding.
Yeah.
Great. Amy's clarified that land beneficiaries for Inuit land claims. And Sadie had asked, yeah, so Sadie had asked, are non-status Indigenous students not eligible? So it's not, we don't look at status, we look at the self-declaration.
That is exactly it.
Because there's, of course, there are some people who are excluded by certain, you know, government legislation. So we don't, yeah.
Which is precisely why we say self-declaration is perfect for us.
And so another one, Jody Sadie asks if an offer of admission says they will fund $16,667 in 5 terms. Does that mean it is the total amount of funding for the whole degree?
This is a 5-term master's program, I would assume.
Sadie, would you be able to say in the comments?
It must be 5.
It has to be. It's 5 terms.
She says yes.
A doctoral degree done that quickly. So the 16,667, yes, would be for the entire 5 terms.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the last Q&A. But if anyone else has any questions, if you could put them in the chat or in the Q&A. I mean, this is a great opportunity. Elizabeth is such a great panelist, and to get their insight on graduate school, applying, life, you know, now's your chance. So we just got a couple of minutes left before our 4:30 end time. So any last questions? Or actually, Elizabeth, did you have any maybe last words or anything you would, someone had asked about online courses, or sorry, online programs. So York, the majority of our programs are on-campus programs. So there's some flexibility, especially in a PhD for the research portion, to do that kind of not needing to be necessarily in Toronto all the time. But at the master's level, we only have a couple of programs that are available through distance or remote learning. So it would depend on what you're interested in. We can certainly talk specifics, but there's not too many. So hopefully that answers that. But yes, Elizabeth, if you have anything you didn't feel you got to say, or any knowledge you'd like to pass along, no pressure. If Winston has anything to share as well.
He does this thing where like he wants me to hold my arms in a certain way. He uses all 10 pounds of his body weight to like force my arms into that position. Oh, that's so funny. I love him so much. What else do I want to say about grad school? Yeah, I just think that there's just like so many different programs, and like I want to like articulate that it doesn't necessarily have to be in one thing. So I'm just like in history. I'm in a mainstream program. I'm sure that Indigenous studies is a much different experience, but I've been to 3 different universities, and I've never had an Indigenous history professor teach me anything about Indigenous people's history at this point. I've had Indigenous people on my supervisory committees who were either just like not teaching courses at that time, or were on maternity leave or things like that throughout my time in the program. But that's not always the case. Like not all mainstream programs are like that. Not all Indigenous studies programs are like that. So I'm speaking from like turning a mainstream program into an Indigenous topic.
Well, and hopefully eventually, if you want this, Elizabeth, you're going to end up graduating and getting a job and becoming the Indigenous professor in a mainstream discipline that indigenizes the discipline.
They've just got to pay me really, really well. Really, really,
We'll
really,
pay
really well.
very, very well.
All right. So before I go to Ali to sign off, Jody, was there anything you'd like to add regarding funding just in the last little bit?
No, nothing to add.
Awesome. And so everyone, I'll put I'll put my email in the chat, and I think Jody, if you're able to as well, you can email either of us about admissions or funding at any point, and we can, help with your situation, point you in different directions, connect you with people, and please email anytime. All right, Ali, all you.
Oh, and Am I not muted? Okay, great. Oh, I'm still trying to figure out this Zoom life. I feel like I'm learning so many things. This has been so interesting. There's been a lot of acronyms that I do not know, so I've written them down, and I'm gonna try to learn. I do want to briefly just talk about our Center for Indigenous Student Services, because I think that's kind of why I'm here. And I just wanted to share some of the programming and the support services that we offer. So really, I find, like I kind of said before, especially for graduate students, like the support that we offer for them sometimes has been just the physical space. That is a little bit different now in COVID. We're still open. Students can still come in and use this space that we have. We are just down the hall from the Faculty of Graduate Studies. So if you need to kind of like hit up that office and get some funding questions handled, or I don't know, talk to someone in there, and then come over here and have a space to kind of come and relax at, that is a great opportunity for you. We currently are open by appointment. So if you do look for our website on the York website, although even for me to find it, I just go to Google and I write York University Center for Indigenous Student Services and it comes up. It's a little bit tricky sometimes navigating the York website. It will come up and you can learn more about us. You can learn about kind of what our safety plan is. Under that, we have our CISS members appointment bookings form. So we ask students, whether they're undergraduate or graduate students, to fill out a membership form to just kind of give us some basic information about you, just so we can keep track of our students and who you are and get your email and our numbers. And then we ask students if they're interested in coming into the space to use the computers or to use printing or to make themselves a cup of coffee or have somewhere to kind of study and hang out in between classes if they are on campus. Or if you need to do a class that's online and you just came from a class that's on campus, we're open for that too. I mean, maybe bring headphones just in case there's another student in the space, so you're not maybe disturbing them. But I know that some students have been using our space for that purpose too, because it has been a little bit tricky for some students to find a quiet space to go to be a part of their class that's online. Yeah, so you just would fill out that form. We ask that you book 24 hours in advance. If it's a little bit less than 24 hours, we could probably make it work. We are having a limit of 3 students in the space at one time, just to keep everyone as distant as possible, as safe and healthy and well as possible. So that is very important. And of course, like wearing your masks. I'm currently in my office and my door is closed, so my mask is off, but whether staff or students or anyone is kind of walking around the main little hall here or in the larger student area, we ask that our masks are on, just to protect our community. So we do have different programming available. We have an Elder on Campus program. Amy Desjardins is our knowledge keeper at CISS. She holds weekly cultural teachings, variety of different topics. She has monthly full moon ceremonies and some like one-on-one sessions with students. I do believe she's looking at possibly doing a few full moon ceremonies in person, as distanced as possible, outside. I'm not 100% sure on that yet, but I think that that is a hope, because we really do our space and our goal is to provide culture and access to culture for students. So that's really important for us. We also have our Indigenous Sharing Circle program. This is a little bit more utilized by undergraduate students, I find, but I think that an area to grow and room to grow and really prosper would be involving more graduate students as well. It's meant as like a peer mentorship program. So having kind of that support, providing that guidance. And I think it's important too, like anyone can learn from anyone. I have learned from students who are undergraduate students here. And like, just because I have an undergraduate degree from a university doesn't mean that I know more than them. So I think it's really important that students just learn from everyone. And we all just, see each other as equals and a learning opportunity. In the past, they've done really fun things too. I think this is a bit more limited right now with COVID. So they are trying, but in the past, they've gone to different events like Imaginative. They went to like Halloween Wonderland, how, I don't know what it's called. I don't do Halloween stuff. It's too much for me. But they have done fun things. So hopefully in the future that will happen more. But currently right now they're offering a lot of sort of online sessions. I know too, I think they're doing something called Strawberry Jam sessions with Amy. So on Fridays from 4 to 5, they're meeting online and, oh, sorry, I'm just looking at the time. Oh my gosh. Okay. So yeah, so just some ways for students to make connections, create community, and really feel involved. We offer our own workshops. So Nancy Johnson, she is my wonderful colleague. She is an amazing support person. She creates these cultural workshops. So we have done beading, moccasin making, we did hand drum making, we've done ribbon skirt making. Currently right now it's a lot of beading. Online also makes it a little bit tricky, but she works so hard to get beading kits put together for everyone, sends them out to you in advance so you can be a part of that. And yeah, that's really, and then we also try to have different events and activities like orientation, our welcome social, our kind of holiday time, our graduation celebration. And like I said, in the past, in person, we did have an in-person event recently as sort of our social for the fall. And we'll definitely be figuring out how to still have these celebrations and still create these connections in this community, but also making sure that everyone is safe and stays well. So yeah, that was just a brief little snapshot. We have a writing skills instructor. I think Rebecca Lazarenko, I think is how you pronounce her last name. I think Elizabeth is not the same person you were talking about earlier. Yeah, okay. I wanted to just confirm. So she has taken on the role of writing instructor. So it's a little bit more to help in undergraduate students, sort of working with how to write, but I'm sure she also meets with master's and PhD students as well. Yeah, so those are just a few of the supports and services that we have available here at CISS. And I think I see that we've gone 2 minutes over time. So I'm thinking unless anyone has any other kind of like parting things to say, words of wisdom, are we wrapping up?
Yep, just from the chat, Sarah says Chi-miigwech and best wishes. I think this is for Elizabeth, Chi-miigwech, or best wishes on your studies. And Nancy has shared the website for CISS. So if anyone wants to check that out. But other than that, it's just it's a thank you for everyone for taking the time with us today. Thank you so much to Elizabeth for speaking and sharing. Tom and Jody, thank you as well. And yeah, please email with any questions, and hopefully we'll see you at our Indigenous applicant reception in the future. I'm just putting that out there. And
yeah, and I just want to say Chi-miigwech to Eileen for all of your work in coordinating this, and to Tom, thank you so much for your wisdom, and to Elizabeth as well, and Amy too, who had to leave us, but it was so great to see your wonderful faces. And I'm glad to hear that they're happier faces. So yeah.
Great. Okay, so we'll end it there, and wishing everyone a good rest of your day. Have a good one.
Okay. Samapi.